The public schools feel that drill is punishment to the child. They don't want to hurt their feelings or make their self-esteem hurt in any way. This is ridiculous. What they really need is the drill simply to learn. How can you possibly learn your times tables or learn to spell words or learn to sound out words if you don't use drill? You need to go over these things until they become a part of you. And it isn't going to affect your personality. It's not going to make you feel any worse. Drill is something that you actually need to do. It's not punishment in any way. I'm sorry.
That's fine. I wondered if you had said that they do consider the punishment drill, right? What about, do the public schools really teach phonics?
We feel that the public schools don't teach phonics, certainly not teaching phonics the way our Alpha Phonics book is presented. The teachers will say they do simply because they have had some phonics in their colleges of education, but this is not what is really considered true learning of phonics, of sounding out the syllables in order to learn how to read.
What about the idea of socialization? If someone considers homeschooling, we do hear from people that are concerned that their child won't be properly socialized.
Socialization is not a problem for homeschool families simply because homeschoolers have their own organizations. They have an organization for music, they have them for sports, they have them for drama, they have them for anything that the public school can offer without the bad socialization. One of the things where a child from a homeschool family really benefits is simply because they don't have to spend a lot of time being taught things that you don't want. For instance, sex education, influence from drugs, gangs, things like this. The homeschool child can go with their parent and experience all kinds of things. In the public schools, once in a while they'll have a field trip where they'll take children someplace to expose them to another part of learning. But now with the economy the way it is, we have found that many of the public schools have had to eliminate those field trips. So the public school students don't have an opportunity to do any of these things, where the homeschool families are able to take their children to do all kinds of things. They don't have to spend hours and hours on learning different subjects. They can concentrate on the ones that are important to them and eliminate all the others and really eliminate the bad socialization that you don't want.
Another thing I'd like to mention, a reason for considering homeschooling is that in the public schools very often a child is diagnosed, and I put quotes around that, by the so-called experts, that they might have something like dyslexia if they're not learning to read very well. Of course, we know that the reason they're not learning to read in almost every case is that they're not taught by a good method. If you use a good phonics instruction program, a child will learn to read. But unfortunately, what happens if a child doesn't learn to read, they become a discipline problem in the room, because if they can't read, they can't do anything else. And if they can't do anything else, they'll bother other students, they'll get in the teacher's way. So the teacher usually then consults with the nurses, and they bring in the psychologists and the reading experts, and before you know it, they'll put the child on something like Ritalin and literally drug them. And this obviously is not good for the child, but it does at least solve the problem for the classroom teacher, because it quiets the child down. So this is something that is not a problem in homeschooling. Another thing that I'd like to touch on, this is not exactly a reason for considering homeschooling. It's a point that's important to understand, and it's a question of class size in the public schools. The public schools keep arguing for smaller and smaller. The people who run the public schools keep arguing for smaller and smaller classes. However, in the Great Depression of the 1930s, when things were very bad economically, many schools literally closed. Many school districts had to consolidate their classes into larger and larger classes, let teachers go, and one teacher would find herself or himself with more and more students. When it was all said and done, after it was over and the records were checked, it turns out that the student proficiency did not decline any during the Great Depression, even though class size went way up. Something else I'd like for June to touch on is the fact that we have offered to public schools a test program with our Alpha Phonics book. You want to touch on that, June?
Yes, we have. We wanted to do what we call a controlled class situation, where we would have a teacher use the Alpha Phonics book. We would supply the books to the class at no charge, and then have another teacher who would be teaching the first grade as the one that we have selected, and continue using the same methods they had done before. Then at the end of the semester, we would compare the two reading groups. When it was presented to the teachers, they turned it down, saying, no, this is not the way we were taught in the colleges of education. This is not something that we're interested in, and we don't even want to try it. But what they miss is the fact that by using the Alpha Phonics, they have a far superior program and a far superior results to what they're trying to achieve. I want to go back to one thing that Peter was talking about as far as class size, and this is the one-room schoolhouse.
Oh.
We found that the one-room schoolhouse was extremely beneficial. You had a teacher who could teach more than one grade. The older children were able to teach the younger children. The younger children didn't have to wait to be exposed to other subjects that they were interested in until they were in one of the upper grades. They could benefit from this expanse of knowledge. If you will recall, or maybe you wouldn't know, but our forefathers were either taught homeschool or one-room schoolhouse. There were no public schools. Obviously, these men were great achievers, and we have found that even in Idaho and some of the remote areas, there are still some one-room schoolhouses, and they do very, very well. They do certainly every bit as well as any public school.
I'm glad you remembered to bring up the one-room schoolhouse, because in a way homeschooling is very much like the one-room schoolhouse, because one parent, one mother might be teaching 3 or 4 children. We've
Yes.
had some that have 6 children they're teaching at one time, and that's very much like and the things that happen in a one-room school are actually happening in the home too. Well, in general, none of these issues or problems that we've we've brought up here in this session are problems for homeschooling, and therefore good reasons for parents to consider homeschooling their children, at least for the first few years, to get them a very good start academically and morally and physically, to avoid some of the pitfalls that take place in public schools, and take matters into their own hands. And there's also and we've experienced this over and over many times in talking to parents, the pleasure and joy they have in being able to teach their own children is something that you can't measure. And we've heard back from many homeschooled children who are now adults and they have their own children, and they universally are so grateful that their parents took the time and trouble and loved them enough to teach them at home, and they certainly appreciate that very much. Well, we hope this is helpful to someone who has been trying to decide what to do. And remember that we are available. You can call us, email us, or snail mail us, and we'll be happy to talk over any questions or problems you have at any time. Thank you.